Hey everybody, welcome back to Friar Talk. Today we're going to be talking about the impact that some of the players returning to the Padres from the IL can have for this team. Obviously, we know how much injuries impacted us down really after the All-Star break. Yu Darvish had some injuries. Blake Snell, was on a fantastic streak of, a lot of great innings for this team after starting slow. Came out, looked fantastic, got hurt. Chris Paddock got hurt. Really, the only guy that was the Iron Man in the starting rotation was Joe Musgrove. We even had some injuries on the field. I believe Tommy Pham at one point, Trent Grisham at the beginning of the season. Will Myers pretty much played all season hurt. Fernando for 30 games. So lots of injuries to this team. But we're mainly going to name the guys that really didn't get to play this whole season. Number one, we got to start definitely with this guy, Mike Clevenger. I think if he's able to come back and do what he has pretty much always been able to do when healthy, I think he can be either the number one or the number two in this rotation with, behind Joe Musgrove or ahead of Joe Musgrove. And that's not a knock to Blake Snell or Yu Darvish. I just kind of think Yu Darvish with his age and losing the sticky stuff, having to adapt, and he has a lot of time to adapt, but I just think, the guys ahead of him are going to be so much better than him. But the impact Mike Clevenger can have on this team, very small sample size, but looked really, really, really good with the Padres. Obviously, there was a lot of hype when we traded for him. Traded a lot to get him in Cal Quantrill, which was clearly a devastating move considering what he did in like a 10-game stretch where he had a 1.69 ERA. Josh Naylor has been okay. But yeah. So pretty much I'm excited for it. I know some people think that it was a bad move to trade for Mike Clevenger just because Cal Quantrill was doing so well. Now, do I think that Cal Quantrill should have been in that trade? I don't. But at the same time, I do think Mike Clevenger would have been super impactful if healthy. So I think he's going to have a huge impact on this team. I watched his videos today where he quoted Roy Jones Jr. and that glove was popping. Now, of course, empty stadium. It's going to sound a lot louder than it does. Nobody around. So, but he looks good. He's been progressing really well. He said that it was a couple months ago. He said that now that this is his second Tommy John surgery, he's progressing really well. He knows the process. He's able to go through it faster because he knows, he knows the rehab process of it. So, Chase, what do you think Mike Clevenger will do for this rotation? How big of an impact do you think he'll have? Do you think he'll start the season as a normal starter? Do you think he'll start slow?
I think they're going to start everyone slow because that's what they kind of did last year. The opening series, I don't think anyone went 5 innings. Maybe Musgrove, maybe 5 or 6 innings for Musgrove, but that was because he was really efficient with his pitch count. But I think they might start him off kind of how like they did Paddock his rookie year. I think he didn't throw more than 90 pitches in a game. If not, it was like between 90 and 95.
Right.
They might keep him like that for the first month or two, which is okay. As long as he's efficient with it, that's perfectly fine. You really don't need him the first half or like the first 2 months of season. You have a pretty good rotation. So him just coming back makes it better. And you really don't need him to show out the first 2 months. You need him down the stretch. We saw what happened here. We need all our pitchers down the stretch. Kind of start him off slow. But yeah, dude, he's probably the bona fide ace of this. You can say Musgrove, you can say Snell if he continues what he did at the second half of the season, because that second half was legendary. That August stretch, but July to August was legendary, and
Disgusting.
and then having the Iron Man, the workhorse, and Joe Musgrove, that's a nasty top three, and then you have Darvish sitting at 4. Darvish is probably a 2 starter on most teams, and him being at 4, it's a really big impact. And then you still have other guys that can fit number 5 and number 6, which they probably should do. I'm gonna say this again. They should probably go to the 6-man. Imagine how many injuries you would have saved yourself because the guys were overworking themselves at point. But yeah, to bring up another starter that we got to see a little bit of. I think he pitched 1, maybe 2 games. Adrian Motorhome. He's got Tommy John. He's 22. Probably won't He might be back at the beginning of the season. If not, I'm not going to expect him until probably May, maybe the beginning of June. But we're not going to forget that kid has absolutely nasty stuff. Throws 100 miles an hour as a lefty, has a nasty slider, has that nasty little, is it like the knuckle change? So do I think he's going to come back as a starter, though? I don't think so. But if he can fill that Josh Hader-esque role that we always keep mentioning, that kid's going to be something special. You have him at the back of the bullpen, absolutely just lights out. You guys are going to win ball games because he is used to being a starter. He's going to be used to going multiple innings. You can use him just like Josh Hader, just like Andrew Miller in the postseason. And now we're seeing it Maztec with the Braves. We need a guy like that on the team, and I feel like he can be that. So what do you think?
Right. Adrian Motorhome is I think he can be the heart and soul of a bullpen. I think just with his stuff, how hard he throws as a lefty, the stuff he's shown, he just has so much potential to be the rock of a bullpen. Right now, or at least in 2020, he got hurt in 2021. Drew Pomeranz was kind of thought to be the heart of the bullpen, somebody that you can just throw out there and you know what you're going to get out of him. I think Adrian Motorhome can definitely be that exact thing. And that's not saying Drew Pomeranz still won't be in this bullpen. I think Drew Pomeranz is an essential piece of the bullpen. However, injuries, age, making kind of a lot as a reliever, kind of a lot of money, I would say. We don't know what will happen with him. I expect him to stay though, but it's always good to have more bullpen arms, considering how heavily taxed the bullpen was at one point. And we've mentioned that at one point they were on pace to throw the most innings by a bullpen ever. So it's going to be integral to get more guys in the bullpen. We've mentioned that Josh Hader role multiple times. Like Chase has said, we've said it can be filled by Ryan Weathers. More realistically, I think it can be filled by Adrian Motorhome. I think he has better stuff than Ryan Weathers. Chase brought up, do we think he can be a starter? Probably not. I think this injury kind of derailed that hope that he could be a starter. However, maybe down the road, I don't think so. I don't think it's likely, but at the very least, a very, very solid bullpen arm that you can get back. And health has kind of derailed somebody else in this starting rotation / bullpen. And this guy is probably going to be the most talked about when it comes to injuries, other than Fernando and his shoulder. Dinelson Lamet. Dinelson Lamet's a tricky story. We don't know if it seemed like he needed Tommy John. It seemed like he declined it. We don't know what actually happened. I don't want to speak too much on that. Now, if he's healthy, we've mentioned it, he could be a closer. If he's not healthy, then is there really a point of keeping him? Chase and I and Matt, we love Dinelson Lamet. We love his stuff. We think he's electric. I personally think 2020 Dinelson Lamet is the most fun I've ever had watching a pitcher for the Padres. So much fun. Just so much fun to watch him. You knew it was a W. And unfortunately, injuries kind of took that from us Padre fans. But Chase, what do you think of Dinelson Lamet?
Y'all know I'm like one of the biggest Dinelson Lamet believers. I've talked about this man since high school, like, was it 5 years ago when he first started on the Padres? The kid is electric. The guy's electric. And it's unfortunate that, his elbow injuries have derailed his kind of career as a starter. And if the Padres were smart, they look at the stuff that he has. They go, if you're healthy, you got to be the closer, man. I'm sorry, you cannot start games anymore. You are too valuable to this team. Your stuff is too electric. We need you coming out of that ninth inning to just save games, just because you have the stuff to do it, and you'd be way more valuable coming out every 2 to 3 nights, or every night for 2 to 3 games, and then getting rest, and then you would be as a starter, because you'd pitch more games that way. You pitch more games, you pitch less innings, and you probably have a better impact than you did on a starter, because realistically, he hasn't really gone a full season without getting hurt. And that's where our concerns are. I love him. I want him to be a starter. I kind of had him as like a dark horse Cy Young pick in 2020. That was like one of our first podcasts is who would be the team MVP, who would be the possible Cy Young winner. we all agreed that Dinelson Lamet could have been that guy, and he proved it in 2020. It was like one of our first podcasts ever. I really want to see him succeed as a starter, but I think we need him as that closer. Having him and Motorhome at the back of the bullpen would just be absolutely nasty. Oh my God, I'd be so hyped to see both of them coming out. But yeah, while we're on the topic of bullpens, another guy who's kind of been, I wouldn't say necessarily a starter, but kind of an opener and that long inning guy. We got Matt Strahm. He's got the knee injury again. I know you weren't the biggest Matt Strahm fan, but I think he did eat up some valuable innings when he was healthy. We saw it in 2020. We saw it in 2019. We saw it in 2019. He did that opening role very successfully. He would give up maybe one run, but most of the times it was 2 innings, no earned runs, and then the starter would come out. And I feel like if you have that guy doing that for like some of the rookie pitchers, if you have Ryan Weathers coming in after that, or you have Mackenzie Gore hopefully coming up next season, and it kind of just eases them into the game. And I feel like that'd be very important, very valuable. We don't have a lot of guys that have fulfilled that opening role like Strahm has and been successful with it. So I think that's very important. I think he's very successful. He's a good long inning guy. And we saw how many extra inning games we got into and how misused the bullpen was. If we have Matt Strahm, we might win some of those games just because he goes 2-3 innings without, breaking down.
Right. Remember in 2019, he did start the season as I want to say the number 5 in 2019. It was, I know Nick Markevicius was the number 3. I'm pretty sure Matt Strahm was the number 5 though. He could definitely fill, those long reliever role where we saw kind of Nabil Crismatt. Nabil Crismatt's not giving up that role. Nabil Crismatt was arguably the MVP of the bullpen, but we could always use more. We've mentioned that injuries kind of derailed the Padres' hopes to the playoffs, and I wouldn't say it was just injuries, clubhouse drama. Jace Tingler not being able to manage a baseball team was also a huge factor. But injuries also playing one of the biggest factors. And who knows? Maybe with another long reliever, they're able to preserve their starting pitching. Of course, Chase knows I'm not the biggest Matt Strahm fan, but I'm always a fan of having more guys in the bullpen to be able to help out the bullpen. So that way, all the starters aren't reaching. Like I'm pretty sure Craig Stammen reached almost 100 innings this year, something crazy. I'm not exactly sure. It's like in the 80s, 90s, something like that. That's way too many innings for a reliever. So I think a healthy Matt Strahm can be a difference maker. Obviously, there's going to be those games where we get pissed off at him because he's not really doing good. But, he's not one of those shutout guys out of the bullpen. He's just serviceable. And that's, on some teams, that's just what you need. So I think he can have a decent impact on this team. I wouldn't say anything crazy, but always need more arms. I'm trying to remember the other names. I think Altavia. I think we can both agree. I personally don't care.
I don't want him.
I don't want him. Yeah, I personally don't care. How about this one? And this sucks because I like him. We don't actually know what's happening with Chris Paddock.
That's a tough one. That's quite the tough one.
I think we're all going into the season assuming that he's going to be healthy because we haven't heard too much about it. But realistically, he had what was it, like a UCL? Something like that? Forearm?
I think it was an elbow strain.
Something like that.
At the end of the season.
Right. So we don't really know what's going on with him. We don't know if he's going to come into the season healthy. If he does come into the season healthy, what happens if he has to go on the IL for an extended period of time? Now, obviously, if he's healthy, the number 5 spot most likely is his. He definitely showed a lot of improvement with his curveball. He's going to get a really, really good pitching coach to help him improve on his fastball that I actually thought didn't look as good as it used to, but he was throwing it harder. He just needs a little bit more movement on his ball. But Niebla is going to be huge for him. So if he's healthy, I think that 5th spot could be his. If not, I don't know. I don't know what they'll do with that. Gore is definitely an option. I brought up
Gore, buddy.
Yeah, Mackenzie Gore. That's what I think too. I brought up Bassett and Montas in the Olsen video. They could realistically be options if the trade market is the way AJ goes. Um, but if he's healthy, I'd love to see Chris Paddock in that fifth spot. I think, with Niebla, he can definitely excel and be a, maybe not an ace caliber pitcher, but I think a 3.5 or a 4 ERA is in the realistic for him.
As anything in the low, like mid threes, is a perfect for a 5-star, because realistically, you look at most 5-stars around the league, they're hovering right around a 4, if not a little higher than 4. So having a 3.5 5-starter, you look at the numbers and you go, that's not a good pitcher, but that's a great 5-starter. You're not going to ever get 5 guys under a 3.3 ERA. It's just not going to happen. There's too many variables. There's too many different circumstances, too many chances at injury for that to ever happen in a 162 game season. If it does, then it's probably a fluke, but you're probably winning that season in the World Series. Another guy I want to mention, we were saying how, he might not be a lights out bullpen guy in Matt Strahm, but there's another lefty coming back from injury that is definitely a lights out lefty. Jose Castillo. I love that guy. He's a huge guy, comes out, he throws heat, throws a nasty slider. Unfortunately, he's had a few forearm injuries, and this one just ended up costing him to have Tommy John. But if he comes back and is the same exact way that he is, having a combination of Castillo, Motorhome, Lamet, another guy we'll mention in a minute, Pierce Johnson. If Mark Melancon comes back, you have a solid bullpen. You don't need any more bullpen pieces, because if you look at all the injuries to the bullpen, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There was 8 season-ending injuries, and realistically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are possibly a very big impact guys. That's whether or not you want to consider Wingenter a comeback guy, like a high impact guy. We know he could be a mid innings guy. He throws gas, sliders, somewhat hit and miss. But what do you think about Castillo, man? I'm really high on this guy. I think he's going to be huge for us if he comes back healthy and better than ever.
I think the fan base as a whole super high on Castillo, just because we've seen a lot of hype from the Padres media about Jose Castillo, and rightfully so. I pulled up his stats from 2018. Through 38 innings, had a 3.29 ERA with 2.64 WHIP or 9.13 WHIP, 5.4 home run. Sorry, guys, 0.7 home runs per 9, which is really good. I think 0.5 is really good. So, I'll take 0.7 and a 12.2 strikeout per 9. So
that's monstrous.
Yeah, that's really good. Unfortunately, I only got to see 2/3 of an inning from him in 2019. So, he probably is pretty injury prone. We were talking about it the other day, how some guys don't really deserve the injury prone label. I think you can label this guy's injury prone, maybe some bad luck, but at the same time, he definitely could come back better than ever. We don't really know if injuries have surpassed him yet, but we keep talking about guys that could be really good out of the bullpen. This guy's definitely one of them. Like I said, a lot of hype surrounding the guy. Unfortunately, injuries have derailed him as well. But if he's able to come back strong, throw around, I want to say something realistic. I think he can throw around 35 to 45 innings in a season, depending on how he's feeling, depending on how he's performing. I want to say that's realistic, and that's definitely what I would take, considering his injury history. But I think he can have, in those 35, 45 innings, a huge impact on this team.
Mentioning, I think we got like 2 or 3 more bullpen. We mentioned Wingenter. I don't think he's going to be a huge impact. Pomeranz, we mentioned his age is kind of getting up there, but I think there's one more guy, because I know the other guy you're not going to like, so I'm going to go with the one you like first. Keone Kela. That guy was a monster at the beginning of the season before he had to have Tommy John. He had a couple bad games right before the he finally got pulled and it was like, yeah, this guy needs Tommy John. But he comes back and you have another guy that used to be a closer, that's good late game, that can pitch anytime. He's a strikeout machine. He doesn't walk a lot of people, and he doesn't give up a lot of home runs. He's everything you need to be to have a shutdown bullpen at any time, and he can pitch any inning. And I think that would just be huge. We kind of saw that injuries really derailed this Padres bullpen, but if everyone comes back healthy and up better than ever, there's so many coming back that we could legitimately have the best bullpen in the MLB by far. And
Right.
I'm not joking to say that.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's crazy the amount of bullpen arms that went on the IL and that really lost their season due to injury. Keone Kela being a huge part of that, considering we signed him and Mark Melancon around the same time, and them two were on good deals, expected to make big impacts. And Melancon, of course, did. Keone Kela in his time made I'd say an okay impact. Didn't get enough time to really hold his own. Unfortunately, I don't know when he would be back. I know he had Tommy John, and I know that was in May. So I don't know when a realistic return for him would be. However, go for it.
I was gonna say, if he's back by playoffs, that's probably the most important thing ever.
Yeah, exactly. More bullpen arms, of course, in the playoffs is huge. So I really like Keone Kela. I think he could be really solid for us down the road. Like we said, I don't think he costs that much money. So a cheap option that could give you some innings is huge for this team. Like we've said, injuries have pretty much sucked. I'm not blaming Larry, but I'm blaming Larry Rothschild. So, I think there's who else is there? There's Michelle Baez. Okay, I'll say.
I was waiting because I knew you didn't like him, so I was going to save him for last.
All I'm going to say, I don't like him. That's it. That is all I will say.
Wow. I'm impressed. So, for those of you who don't know Michelle Baez, it's been a while. I think he last pitched in 2019. If not, he may have appeared in a couple 2020 games. The kid is 6'8". He throws between 90, throws mid-90s, I think topping out at 98. Has a decent to good changeup at times. And he's come out of the bullpen. He's looked good at times. There are times where he's looked very hittable. So we haven't seen a lot of him. He's kind of one of the guys on the cusps, especially I believe this is his first time going around Tommy John. It might be difficult for him to come back. I don't think he cracks the major league roster when he first comes back just because of how crowded it's going to be. We mentioned all these guys that we believe are impact higher end relievers. It's going to be a fight to be in the bullpen. And it doesn't matter if you're in at this point. There are a lot of talented pieces in here. And so it's about making the team best. And, we've only mentioned a lot of pitchers. There's a couple infielders and outfielders that we want to mention. We would love to see a healthy Austin Nola for at least the majority of the year. I don't care if he only plays like 120 games and you rest him 40 games at catcher or DH. But we would like to see him healthy. We know he's a good hitter. He kind of lacked power this year because of the knee injuries. I think he only hit 1, maybe 2 home runs. We'd love to see a healthy season out of him. And the only other guy I'm going to mention before I let you talk about Nola is Jorge Oña, because I believe he can be a possible DH, but whether or not he makes a huge impact is going to be very questionable. All right. What do you think about those two?
So Austin Nola, unfortunately, didn't really get to have a full season in the books, and it's unfortunate because he was definitely a good hitter in 2020. Of course, a shortened season, but definitely showed some potential. Is a very good athlete. Was a shortstop before he became a catcher. We saw him play second in that Cardinal series. We believe he can play first. So definitely has positional versatility, which is very good to see out of him. Now, what I do want to see out of him in improving is power. We need a catcher that can hit for power. We need power throughout our lineup. And that was what was significantly missing from Austin Nola. Now, I do think there's an in-house option that provides a lot of power in Luis Campusano, But in order for us to have Luis Campusano, we would have to carry 3 catchers because remember, Yu Darvish has a personal catcher. So realistically, I want Luis Campusano up because he excelled in AA, he excelled in AAA, and I actually thought he was hitting okay. I know the stats don't show, but I actually thought he was hitting the ball kind of hard when he was in the MLB. So I think he has a lot of potential. I don't know if Mike Clevenger is dependent on pitchers or on catchers, sorry, but if he's not, Campusano could catch him. I think Campusano could catch Paddock if Paddock is in the rotation. And obviously, the very obvious is Snell Snell needs Nola behind the plate. Snell excelled when Nola was behind the plate. Musgrove at first excelled when Caratini was behind the plate, but when Nola took over for him, again started looking. I mean, he looked the same. He looked fantastic pretty much all year, but he looked great. So Nola's huge for those 2 guys. Campusano's huge for the lineup. Jorge Oña, you think he could be a good DH. I do too. Looks like he has a lot of power. Small sample size. Only time will tell with him, but he's an exciting prospect.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned the whole pitchers thrived under Austin Nolan. We saw it when he first got traded. Like 3 first 4 games were shutout games when he first got traded to the Padres. He's a great game caller. He's a great defensive catcher. We just want to see more power out of him. And I think if the DH comes around, yeah, you might give Campusano the occasional spot start at catcher. But I really think you have to leave Nola behind the plate until Campusano's ready to make that step forward defensively. I think it's got to be just because of the impact he has on almost every single pitcher in the staff except Darvish because Caratini.
Right. Want to say that's it, right? Yeah, so obviously a lot of names. Definitely a lot of high impact names. We named off Chris Paddock, Mike Clevenger, Drew Pomeranz, doesn't really need to be talked about. Dinelson Lamet. So a lot of high impact players that we think can make huge differences for this team to lead them to the 2022 playoffs. They made the right hire so far. We just need the players to be able to come through. Let us know what you guys think in the comments, who you guys think is going to have the biggest impact. And I mean, hopefully we get my player would be Mike Clevenger. Hopefully we're able to get a healthy Mike Clevenger throughout the whole year. But thank you guys for listening. Matt and I will be live on Sunday. So we hope to talk to you guys then.